This episode of Chilling Tales for Dark Nights is brought to you by Mood. Hey, summer might be coming to an end, but the party isn't over until we say it is, right? Let's keep that summer relaxation going for a while with Mood. Mood is the finest source out there for federally legal THC products, all designed for just the right mood. Happy, creative, focused, social, aroused, and more. No more guessing games. Choose your favorite category, choose your mood, choose your potency, and you get just what you're after. Already missing summer before it's over? Run it back with 20% off your first order and free gummies. Go to HelloMood.com and use promo code CHILLING. That's HelloMood, MOOD.com. Code CHILLING for 20% off your order and free gummies.
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications.
It's time to turn off the lights and turn on the dark.
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.
Good evening, listener. You're listening to Chilling Tales for Dark Nights. On tonight's edition, we invite you to leave behind your safe reality and descend with us into the frightening depths of the most terrifying imaginations with an audio adaptation of frightening fiction about swapping sabotage. No, not that kind. I mean, body doubles, doppelgangers. Hell, straight up identity thieving. I'm your host, Paul J. McSorley, and tonight and every other Wednesday night, I'll be your guide as we traverse the dimly lit corridors of your darkest dreams. Joining us tonight to help bring to life the frightening fiction of Sylvester Barzey is Rissa Montanez, Olivia Steele, and featuring myself, Paul J. McSorley. Now get your ticket ready. Take your seat in our theater of the minds and brace yourself. It's time to turn off the lights and turn on the dark. Our tale this evening is written by Sylvester Barzey and performed by Rissa Montanez, Olivia Steele, and featuring myself, Paul J. McSorley. In it, we meet a woman desperate to get a leg up in her career, no matter the consequence. Now, without further ado, I present to you Shades of Blue.
My brand is my baby. My brand is my baby. Do you know what a daily mantra is? They're those little sayings you repeat to yourself, and by speaking them into the universe, they're supposed to manifest into your destiny or something like that. Every morning, my sister Isabella sends me a new one. It's been 2 years of 3 a.m. "Go get 'em, boss bitch" text messages. And the only things I've gotten are coffee and lunch orders. I used to pick up breakfast for the office, but someone claimed they were allergic to bacon and requested I no longer do the breakfast orders. My brand? No one is allergic to bacon. Even a pig will eat a pig if you give it a chance. Is my baby, I shouted. The reason I'm here, yelling at my bathroom mirror at this ungodly hour, is because No Bacon Becky called out this morning and told me to cancel all her meetings. She only had one meeting on the books, and I didn't want to be rude. Okay, I'm trying to steal a client and get off of coffee duty, okay? Sue me. The phone vibrated then so fiercely in my hand that I jumped and almost dropped it. Get a grip, Mia, I whispered. I combed my fingers through my hair and saw the message come to life just as I got dressed for the victory that was in my near future. Message from my little sis. You got this, chica. Show them you mean business. Who's the client? Is it Michael B. Jordan? Slip in my number. No, FaceTime me. I rolled my eyes and tried my best not to laugh, calling attention to myself as I made myself at home in Bacon Becky's office. My fingers danced along the screen. Damn, can I reply, ho? My little sis said, My B. I said, It's not Michael B. Jordan. Little sister said, Okay, is it the guy who played Wallace on The Wire? I said, It's not Michael B. Jordan. Little sis said, Okay, who is it?
Rebecca Goldman?
He asked. It was a smooth question, laced with a hint of dominance in his tone. My head slowly came up from my lap as I awkwardly settled into Rebecca's black leather chair. All her planner said was Blue 11:30. I watched in awe as his hand extended towards me, his white gold Rolex peeking out, gently tucked beneath a bright white cuff of his tan, fitted suit.
Vincent Grant. I'm sorry I'm late,
he said. I looked back down at my phone and then tossed it into the open desk drawer before standing up, perhaps a bit too eagerly to shake his hand. He had a firm grip. He must work out. It's fine. I was just dealing with one of my other clients. You know how it is. Why did I say that? What am I talking about? Vincent politely smiled and sat down across from me.
You don't need to explain. My manager had a few fires to put out back in the day.
He had a clean haircut, one that made his brown hair shine under the office lights like he was stepping out of a GQ ad. His face wasn't like those pretty boys you see trying to get into downtown clubs with their shirts unbuttoned down to their belly buttons. No, he had a rugged look. Kind of like James Dean, a classic type of cute. I'm sure you were nothing but trouble back then, I replied. Vincent lifted his right leg, resting his ankle on his knee.
Oh, the trouble never stopped. The manager just died.
He locked his bright blue eyes on me, but he wasn't smiling. Not even a cute smirk. I had a hard time deciding if he was joking or if I should have sent flowers. I'm so sorry, I mumbled.
Don't be. It was 20 years ago. I'm sure he's come to terms with it by now.
This time he laughed, and I quickly joined in. He shook his head and rested his hands on his leg.
You look nothing like I thought you would.
Was that a compliment or an insult? And how did you think I looked?
Not that I have a problem with it or anything. My ex-wife was from Cuba. You just didn't sound Hispanic on the phone,
he replied. I raised an eyebrow at his words, and then my phone buzzed on the desk, pulling me back to what I was doing. I was building my brand, securing my destiny. Oh, I'm so sorry for the confusion. I laughed and wiped my sweaty palms down my pant leg. This was the point of no return. The moment that decides whether I hear a, "Great job, Mia, welcome to the big leagues," or, "You're fired, clean out your desk, and make sure you leave your business cards." Damn, I'm gonna have to take that dumb unemployment class again. Rebecca couldn't make it today. I'm covering her meetings. Did she not tell you? Yes. When in doubt, toss Becky under the bus and make sure she hits every wheel.
No, she didn't.
Vincent's demeanor changed, and I glimpsed myself filling out job applications while eating ice cream for breakfast and watching The Real in my PJs.
Guess that just drives home the point I was making.
What point was that? I asked.
The trouble never stops.
He smiled and uncrossed his legs. I watched the tan fabric begin to unwrinkle as my dreams imploded. I can help you with all your needs, Mr. Grant. I couldn't let him leave. I couldn't let him walk out on me. Just let me know what they are. He smiled, sat down, and crossed his legs once again. And just like that, I landed my first client. I had no idea how big of a client he was. Mr. Grant, Vincent, had a running joke where he asked me if I even really worked for the agency. Honestly, my level of cluelessness about his career was embarrassing. Thankfully, Netflix, Google, and Isabella exist. Lunch with my sister is always a treat and a chore. We've been taking care of each other ever since our mother passed away 10 years ago. I'm never sure if passed away is the right term, but I can't bring myself to use the other one. It makes it too real, too dark. Isabel has no such problem. She makes it clear as day that it was a murder. She was just one of many women who went missing in the city. The police were very hesitant to call it a serial killer, mostly for the same reasons I hate using the word murder. When you toss a label like serial killer out, then it turns everything into something else. It's no longer something random, no longer something that just happens. It becomes an unorganized and planned, deadly force of nature. One that's still out there. We sat down on her dorm room floor with open Chinese takeout boxes and stacks of scripts sent over by agents of some big-name directors and some big-money studios. Everyone wanted Vincent for one project or another. When Hollywood found out he had returned looking for roles, it was like saying JFK came back for one more term. You are so damn messy. How the hell do you get any work done in here? I asked. Isabel looked around at the piles of clothes and basketball gear that littered the floor before laughing.
I work my best within the center of madness. It keeps me focused on my homework because if I'm not doing that, then I should be cleaning.
She leaned back on a black beanbag and smiled as she scrolled through her phone.
And that's scarier than any midterm.
I rolled my eyes and pulled a script off the pile. My fingers ran over the black embroidered letters that sat on the cover page. Caged Bird, a tale about a woman trapped in an abusive relationship who finds an escape through singing in her church choir and then finds love in the arms of the choir director. I thumbed through the pages and looked up at Isabel. What about Caged Bird? I asked.
Pass,
she quickly replied. My eyebrow raised, and then I closed the script. It's being produced by Netflix, I said.
I know, it's a good script, but...
But what? I asked. Isabel put down her phone and stared at me.
I don't think Vincent wants his first role in years to be the crazed, abusive husband. Not after everything that happened.
I nodded, and she returned to her phone, getting lost in the world of celebrities and basketball scores. When I finally did my homework on Vincent, like a professional should, I found out that he was a big actor in the 80s and 90s. He was in a short-lived family drama. It only lasted one season, but it was enough to catapult him into teen heartthrob status. He did another show and had some supporting roles in movies. Nothing too big. Mama used to call them appetizer roles. They let the industry get a taste of you before really putting some money behind you. He got some summer blockbuster movies, one artsy picture, and then he hit the big times. The lead role in a James Cameron movie. That's where he met Hollywood starlet and his future wife, Jasmine Perez. She was the lead, and life imitated art. They became a Hollywood it couple. But sadly, Hollywood romances are just prequels to a scandal.
What did he have to say about all that?
She asked. My skin tightened as I did my best to pretend this story of a cop and his partner, who was a talking dog, fascinated me.
Hey, puta, I know you heard me,
she shouted. Slamming the script down on the shaggy carpet, I hissed. I didn't ask him about it, okay?
No, it's not okay,
she said. Isabel pulled her long black hair back and wrapped it up into a nice little bun. Her eyes locked on me, and she grabbed my hand.
Do you want to go back to cleaning hotel rooms?
What? No. That was only for the summer, I said. I hated that job, but I had nothing else. The agency told me I couldn't start until the fall. I thought it was my big break. But until then, I still had bills.
You know, the moment his face hits a camera, people are going to ask him what happened to Jasmine,
Isabel said, and then she grabbed one script and tossed it into my lap.
He has to be ready for the tough questions or they'll eat him alive. And if he's dinner, then...
I know. I'm dessert. Hillside?
Vincent plays a doctor who helps a nurse get revenge on a serial killer,
Isabel said. I recoiled from the white page like it was a cobra getting ready to strike. I shook my head. Isabel placed her hand on my knee and sighed.
Don't make everything about her, okay?
Isabel replied. Okay, I hissed. It was sound advice, but that didn't make it easy. Not for me and not for Isabel. But thankfully, we had distractions. She had basketball, and I had Vincent. A few months passed after Vincent rapped on Hillside. Isabel was right. It was an amazing role for him, and he was grateful that I brought it to his attention. So much so that he got me a new car. It was beautiful, and it floored me. But it wouldn't be the last thing that Vincent gave me. Are you nervous? I asked. Vincent looked at my reflection in the mirror and smiled.
If I said I was, could we skip this and get dinner?
I laughed and turned him around as my fingers went about their business tidying up his black tie. No, I replied.
No to playing hooky or no to dinner?
He asked. I placed my finger on my lips and leaned back, staring at him. You should have worn the other suit. It made your eyes pop, I said.
You're avoiding the question,
Vincent replied. No, I'm not, I replied. I was. As much as I tried to ignore it, there was something growing between us. I wasn't sure if it was the gratitude we felt we owed each other, or that neither of us had anything that even remotely resembled a dating life. I like you, Vincent, but for this to work, there have to be some rules, I said.
Rules?
He said, with a playful hint of disgust. Yes, rules, I said and laughed.
Like?
Vincent asked. I wasn't expecting to be on the spot like that, but luckily for me, the show was about to start. The door opened, and a stagehand motioned for Vincent to follow him.
This discussion is not over,
Vincent said. When the door closed behind him, I released a trapped breath from my chest. I ran my hands over my face and did my best to pull myself back into reality. I was his agent, nothing else. Friends became lovers, and you can't do business with lovers. But then I saw Vincent's blue eyes and bright white smile fill up the screen, and it drew my finger to the volume button.
So it looks like things are looking up for you.
Vincent smiled and nodded, but before he could answer and thank the fans for his comeback, the late-night host dropped a bomb on the interview.
I'm sure Jasmine would have been proud,
Jimmy said. Vincent's smile faded, and my chest tightened. It felt like I was in that chair and like it was my darkest moment being pulled up in front of the world. Vincent folded his hands together and stared at his interlocked fingers.
I'm sure she is proud. Jasmine always wanted me to push for more in life.
Vincent's eyes came up to the camera.
This is for you, babe,
he said, stealing the hearts of every woman in America.
Yeah, that entire event was tragic. Just what were you two doing that far out in the ocean?
Jimmy said. Vincent leaned back in his seat. I got to my feet quickly and bolted through the green room door. That sneaky son of a bitch, I muttered. This wasn't on their list of questions. It's a late-night talk show, not an Oprah interview. I pushed past the stagehands, only to make it to the set entrance. I could see Vincent lean forward and rub his hands together.
I ask myself that every day. It was a sweet anniversary surprise. Just me and her on a boat for a weekend.
Vincent said. I could see Vincent clear the tears from his eyes before he looked back at the host.
I didn't tie the boat to the dock right. It was one mistake that snowballed into another and another. I'm sorry, you don't have to. No, I do. I want to, Jimmy.
Vincent combed his fingers through his hair.
Jasmine woke up in the middle of the night and went on deck. Her scream. It was like waking up to a horror movie. Sometimes I still hear it.
Vincent said softly. His eyes turned toward the crowd, and a tear ran down his cheek.
I heard the scream and then splashing. I raced up to the top deck and screamed for her, but there was no answer. So I jumped in. You jumped into the ocean in the middle of the night?
Jimmy asked. The entire set was silent. It was a story that the world had been dying to hear, and not a soul dared to interrupt it, aside from that idiotic host.
If you lost your heart, wouldn't you do anything to get it back?
My hand instinctively went to my chest.
I was in that water until they wrestled me out of it.
The boat rental company reported the boat missing in the morning. That's when the Coast Guard went looking for Vincent and Jasmine. They found Vincent out of his mind, miles away from the boat, still looking for her. Doctors say he ruptured one of his eardrums going so deep repeatedly, but he never found her. No one has. You killed it! I announced. And our glasses clinked together, the bubbles tickling my nose before dancing around my tongue, igniting a celebration in my mouth that was over 20 years overdue. The champagne glass came away from Vincent's lips, and his blue eyes locked onto mine.
We killed it, Mia. I couldn't have done any of this without you, Mia.
Vincent said. After that interview, I realized I didn't need my firm. They were thinking too small. Vincent was a supernova in a world too blind to understand his talent. But as the song goes, I was once blind, but now I can see. My skin tingled, and my heart raced as Vincent's soft skin brushed the back of my hand.
I'm not sure how I made it this long without you,
he said. I chuckled and took another sip of my drink. You would have been just fine without me, I replied.
No, I really wouldn't have been,
he insisted. Our interlocked fingers sent a jolt through my body, and finally, my mind intervened to halt the roller coaster ride my heart was on. I'm going to the bathroom, I said.
I'll order us another bottle,
he offered. I laughed and grabbed my purse from the counter. You do that. As I navigated through the joyful laughter and drunken slurs that filled the bar, I couldn't help but appreciate the unique energy of Hollywood nightlife. It was like playing the lottery, hoping to get lucky and share a drink with a movie star. Or maybe even take one home. Vincent's 15 years my senior, which may seem odd anywhere else, but it's pretty common here. Vincent was different, not like all the rest. Maybe it was because the town had turned its back on him, but there was something genuinely special about him. A sort of knight in shining armor thing, rescuing an abandoned puppy before the city could put it down. Okay, that was a morbid analogy, but it wasn't too far off. After making sure I was alone in the bathroom, I took a moment to reapply my lipstick in front of the mirror. Then I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered to myself, I am a powerful, legitimate boss, and I deserve great things to happen to me. As I inhaled deeply, a chill briefly tickled my nose, causing my skin to tighten. Suddenly, I felt like I was being watched, and an irrational fear washed over me. My worry about someone walking in during my personal pep talk seemed entirely justified at that moment. I'm so sorry, I stammered. The words escaped my lips before my eyes fully opened, but when they did, no word in my vocabulary could explain the feeling that overcame me. Dirty, wet hair clung to her face. Gray eyes leered at me through the mirror, their intensity like daggers. Her hands thrust toward her neck, clawing desperately at her throat. I watched, transfixed as I were trapped inside a sinful theater set ablaze. Her nails ripped into her skin, dragging flesh down in one rapid, horrifying motion. She screamed, and I was freed from her trance, bolting out of the restroom. The door slammed into the wall, drawing everyone's attention, but I didn't care. I made a beeline for the exit, but suddenly, Vincent's powerful arms intercepted me.
Mia, you okay?
He asked. Is everything all right? A man inquired. I looked up at Vincent, trembling, then pointed back at the bathroom. There's a dead woman in there, I whispered. Vincent's concerned look transformed into one of confusion. He exchanged glances with the man before returning his gaze to me.
Wait here,
he said, then left with the man, both cautiously approaching the restroom. I sat at the bar and turned my back to the curious onlookers. Their stares reminded me too much of those eerie white eyes in the mirror. My fingers clutched my glass, causing the liquid inside to sway back and forth, spilling over the edges and running down my fingers. I hadn't realized I was shaking or crying until that moment. I raised the glass to my lips and downed the cold, golden liquid that had been waiting for my arrival. Then I finished Vincent's drink as well. A hand gently rested on the middle of my back, and I jumped. Vincent came into view, his eyes flicking between the two empty glasses and me. Did you see her? I asked, my voice trembling. He looked at the empty glasses for a moment, then sighed, gazing up at me.
There was no one there,
he said. No, that can't be. She was right. I pointed toward the restroom, but suddenly my hand felt so heavy. My entire body felt heavy. My lips moved ever so slightly, but I couldn't form a coherent sentence. I stood up, only to have the floor ripped out from under me as I collapsed. Vincent loomed over me, his words muffled, and then the man returned, assisting Vincent in helping me up. They both seemed so massive, like towering palm trees. The room grew darker, as if something were slowly blocking my vision, until all I could see were her pale eyes, and all I could hear was her haunting scream. People always say, I got so messed up I don't even remember last night. They say it as if it's something relatable, but I've never had that kind of night. I might drink until I need to take my heels off, maybe until I forget how to work the Uber app, or even enough to make me send a late-night text to an ex, but I've never reached the point where I couldn't remember what happened the night before. Until now. The room slowly came into focus, revealing a sea of soft, white nothingness. My body felt heavy, and even my eyelids required an enormous amount of effort to keep them open. My palms pushed at the white fabric, only to feel a cool rush of air hit my skin as it slid down off of me and onto the floor in a heap. The sun was blinding, and I struggled against it, but I couldn't escape its relentless brightness. It shined down on every part of me, casting a harsh light on my shame, and I wished I could hide back under that sheet. I sat up, and as my hands touched my bare skin, I realized there was no place for my shame to hide anymore. The weight of uncertainty filled me, and I couldn't remember how I ended up here. Tears welled up in my eyes as I forced myself out of bed, wrapping that soft white sheet around my body. I'm the older sister from a single-parent Latin household. I won't judge anyone's life, but one-night stands weren't me. The glass door unfrosted as I pulled it open, and I ventured down a long hallway, trying to piece together the events of the night before. We had drinks, or maybe just one drink, and then I went to the bathroom. I stopped the memory of the bloody woman coming back in a rush. I tightened the sheet around me and closed my eyes, attempting to shake off the chill that surrounded me. I pushed past the image of the woman and her haunting scream, only to be left with darkness, punctuated by blurred moments of confusion. Muffled words and hazy faces filled my thoughts. I sighed and opened my eyes to catch sight of a woman in a black dress turning the corner ahead of me. "Excuse me?" I called out to her, but she didn't respond. It irritated me when people couldn't spare a moment to acknowledge another human being. It drove me crazy. My bare feet slapped along the wooden floors as I quickened my pace behind the woman. "Excuse me!" She stopped at the end of another hall, and I tugged at my white sheet to ease its drag on the floor. "Thank you. Where?" Before I could finish my sentence, the woman suddenly turned right and bolted down the hallway. What the hell? I balled up the remaining portion of the white sheet and chased after her, looking like a thought bride-to-be on a wild adventure. But as I turned the corner, I collided with a set of muscular arms and a chest that concealed a heart I'd been yearning to know.
You okay?
Vincent asked. No, I'm not okay. His hands moved from my hips to my shoulders, and I quickly recoiled. All feelings of longing and puppy love fantasies vanish when you wake up naked with no memory of what went on. What the hell happened?
What do you...
Vincent glanced at my makeshift toga and then raised his hands defensively.
Nothing happened. You passed out and I brought you here to make sure you didn't die.
That's what hospitals are for. We locked eyes for a moment, his filled with concern, mine filled with confusion and contempt.
Listen, let's start over. I was making breakfast,
Vincent said, the last part delivered with a hopeful smile as if a meal could erase the weirdness of the situation. But I did wonder if he made pancakes. I crossed my arms over my chest, gripping the sheet around me. I can't find my clothes, I mumbled.
They're in the wash, but there's a closet full of things you can wear until they're done,
he replied. Why did you wash my clothes? I questioned.
To get rid of the evidence,
he said, and a weak smile followed. It was meant as a joke, the kind my younger self would have giggled at and brushed off. But years of loss and disappointing dates had stifled the immature laughter out of me. Vincent smiled and rubbed the back of his neck.
If I knew this was how you acted after a night of drinks, I would have suggested sushi instead,
he quipped. I ran my fingers through my hair and sighed. Just give me my phone so I can call an Uber, I demanded.
You really don't remember last night, do you?
Vincent asked. No, I don't remember a damn thing, I snapped. Vincent's jaw tightened, and he pulled what looked like my phone's demonic cousin out of his pocket. I held my hand out, and he reluctantly surrendered the shattered glass and twisted metal that was supposed to be my phone.
You broke it when you were running out of the bathroom,
he explained. I did this? I whispered, my disbelief mirrored by the phone's cracked screen. The phone looked like a pack of wild elephants decided to go salsa dancing on it. I mean, do elephants live in packs? Stay focused. My eyes reluctantly left the phone and met Vincent's icy blue gaze.
You want to tell me what that was all about?
He inquired. The only thing I want to do is go the fuck home, I exclaimed. I didn't care about his feelings or how adorable his eyes looked in a state of confusion. I didn't care about what he thought of me or what the hell had happened in that bar bathroom. All I cared about was getting home and leaving this bizarre night behind me. I clutched the white sheet tightly to my chest. I just want to go home, Vincent. Please, I pleaded. Vincent's eyebrows furrowed before he rolled his eyes and turned his back to me. I watched him walk through the living room and into an adjacent room. With my eyes closed, I ran my fingers through my hair, trying to collect my scattered thoughts. Shit, I muttered under my breath. This was it. This was the end of everything. Once word got out about this meltdown, no one is going to want to work with me. Well, no one worthwhile. I might get those performance artists from downtown. You know, the ones that paint themselves gold and do the robot. I dropped onto the couch and let out a deep sigh, my gaze shifting to the massive TV mounted on the wall. I bet it cost as much as my rent. He's watching a TV that cost over 3 months of my rent. I dropped onto the seat and let out a deep sigh, my gaze shifting to the massive TV mounted to the wall. Just before the screen came to life, I saw her, the same woman in black that I chased through these halls. I could see her reflection, leaning in as if whispering something into my ear. But then the darkness on the screen vanished, replaced by the local news. Thank you for tuning into Wake Up Nevada. I'm Joanna. My unease grew as well as I searched for that woman who seemed to play hide and sneak with me, whether I wanted to be part of her creepy game or not. I was almost ready to leap to my feet and chase her down once again, but then the words coming from the TV hit me, like a brick, smashed into my skull. Nevada? I whispered. A chill ran down my spine, and even as I tried to pull my hands away, they seemed magnetically attracted to my skin. It was as if I were too afraid to touch anything, or be touched. My body moved almost involuntarily, rising from the black leather seat, and I slowly made my way in the direction Vincent had disappeared. I peeked my head into the room to find him standing in a large kitchen beside a black granite island. His cell phone was resting on the granite, the only object in the room that held his attention. Why does that TV say that we're in Nevada? I blurted out. Vincent didn't look over at me. Instead, he swiftly grabbed his phone and shoved it into his pocket.
Because we are in Nevada, the Black Rock Desert to be more precise.
He replied calmly. The desert? I muttered, puzzled.
You're not going to scream again, are you?
Vincent asked, his tone laced with sarcasm. Ignoring his comments, I rushed toward the nearest window, yanked the curtains open, and was greeted by the surreal sight of a beautiful white oasis surrounded by miles and miles of dry desert dirt. What the fuck?
Calm down, Mia.
Vincent urged. No, you don't get to tell me to calm the fuck down. You drove me to Nevada. I accused him, my frustration boiling over. Vincent looked away, his gaze fixated on the white kitchen floor. I took a step closer. What? I demanded.
Huh?
Vincent replied, feigning ignorance. Why are you looking like I kicked your damn puppy? I snapped. Vincent shrugged, then finally admitted.
We didn't drive out here.
What do you mean we didn't drive? I asked, my confusion deepening. Once again, Vincent attempted to avoid eye contact, prompting me to resort to a tactic I reserved for cheating boyfriends and racist coworkers at holiday parties. I slapped the shit out of him. I watched as his soft white skin transformed into a bright pink. The outlines of my fingers were imprinted on his face now. What the hell do you mean? Vincent's hand rubbed his cheek before he hissed.
We flew here in my chopper.
His finger slid onto the dark black countertop as his thumb tapped against the granite.
I usually fly out here when I don't want to be disturbed. The pilot is on call, but he won't be able to get here until noon tomorrow.
He explained. Why? I asked.
Dust storm. No way in, no way out.
Vincent mumbled. I shook my head. There was no way this was happening. In just a few hours, I had gone from drinks with a crush to feeling like I was stuck in a bad Lifetime movie. My bare feet callously led me to the glass door in the kitchen, where I could see a large white pool surrounded by artificial green grass, reminiscent of mini golf courses. Beyond that, nothing. No buildings, houses, or roads. Just brown and red dirt, with our location marked by a solitary white spot in the vast emptiness.
You should get dressed,
Vincent suggested. I glanced over my shoulder for a moment and back out at the pool. "I need to call my sister," I replied. His eyes traced along my bare back, and then his hand rested on my shoulder. I quickly pulled away.
"Come on, get dressed and you can call her from my phone,"
Vincent said. I silently agreed and followed him. As I walked behind him, doubts filled my mind. Had I overreacted? Maybe he genuinely thought this was romantic or was trying to help. But as my uncertainty grew, Vincent began talking about the house.
"I had it built in the early 90s. It was going to be a surprise for Jasmine,"
he shared. His fingers ran along the wood of a blue door, the only colored door in the house. Hell, everything else was glass. It was a stalker's wet dream.
"She always wanted us to get away, escape all the lights, and just be free. But now it's just me,"
Vincent said. Sadness washed over the moment, so much so that I was forgetting my internal struggle of hating Vincent. Although, I quickly reminded myself it was far too early for Stockholm Syndrome to set in. "What's in there?" I asked. Not because I cared, but just to break the tension of the moment. Vincent's gaze lingered on the blue door, and he gently patted it.
"It used to be a trophy room, but it's infested with black mold. I wouldn't go anywhere near it if I were you,"
he warned. "You planning on fixing it?" I asked.
"No, there's death in that room. I just plan on keeping it locked away,"
he replied with just a hint of laughter, a joke that I seemed to miss.
"Just make sure you never go in it."
He was talking like I would be here longer than a day. I had no plans to explore his moldy little trophy room. It was most likely some extravagant porn theater anyway. I followed him to a bedroom much like the one I had woken up in, except this bed was larger and had black silk sheets. My clothes were neatly folded on top of it. Vincent retrieved his phone and handed it to me. "Thanks," I muttered. Vincent nodded and made his way to the door. I turned to watch him leave, and as the door closed behind him, my fingers dialed like they were possessed. I put the phone to my ear and listened as it rang and rang. "Pick up the phone," I muttered impatiently until Isabel's voice finally filled my ears.
Hey, what's up?
She said cheerfully. "Isabel, I'm freaking the fuck out. Last night, something happened." I whispered urgently into the phone.
What?
She shouted. "I'm not sure, but I think Vincent drugged me, and I'm 99.9% sure I've been kidnapped." I confessed, taking a deep breath. "I need help," I added.
Damn, that sucks. You know what else sucks? That I'm not here.
Isabel replied, laughing, and then telling me to wait for the beep. But I didn't. I ended the call and immediately started dialing another number. My fingers smashed 911 so hard that I thought I might break the phone screen. I held it to my ear and glanced up. And there she was. The blood-stained woman from the bar, staring at me through the window. Her eyes were pale and milky white, her skin gray like ash. The only color she possessed was in her jet-black hair blowing in the wind and the blood running down her neck. Her lips parted, and I braced myself for her scream. My hand shot to my ears, and I screamed, "No! No! No!" My body tensed, anticipating that bone-chilling cry, but what I heard was far more horrifying. The faint sound of shattering glass as the phone plummeted to the wooden floor. My eyes widened, and I rushed to pick it up. When I looked back at the window, nothing was there except the scorching desert landscape. I gazed down at the shattered black mirror and tapped the screen, hoping to bring it back to life, but I got nothing. The door opened, and Vincent's voice surrounded me.
"Are you all right?"
He asked. No, I wasn't all right. I was far from it. Vince kidnapped me. I was clearly suffering some mental breakdown due to whatever drug he slipped into my drink. Either I was hallucinating or being haunted. Regardless, I was far from all right. My finger traced the broken black screen as I finally mustered the courage to ask a question that had been plaguing me since I had woken up here. "Vincent, who else is here?" I asked. I knew the answer before it left his lips, but tears still ran when I heard his answer.
"Nobody. Why?"
He said. Hours passed, and I found myself back in the room with the white sheets, unable to tear my gaze away from my feet, too afraid to look anywhere else. Vincent made us something to eat. I was apprehensive about being drugged or poisoned, but I figured if he wanted me dead, I would be by now. So, I ate. He spoke about our time together, about our future, using words that sounded like we were a married couple on a weekend getaway. I let his words wash over me, my focus fixed on the belief that, despite what Vincent had told me earlier, we were not alone. As we sat at the dinner table, in chairs that should have been empty, sat women. They were all different, each one unique in her own way. Some had jet black hair, while others were blonde. One appeared to be my mother's age, or the age she would have been by now, and another looked like she wasn't even old enough to take the SATs. The only common thread among them was that they were women, they were dead, and they fixed their pale, haunting eyes on me. Throughout the entire meal, they stared at me in eerie silence, with no words, just haunting glares, while Vincent continued his declarations of love.
"Are you listening?"
He asked. The women all slowly nodded, prompting me to do the same. The night continued with the tour of the house, which was far from the open layout people seem to prefer nowadays. Most areas were locked behind closed doors, with only the living room and kitchen open to us. Vincent proudly showed me each room, speaking of the hours he spent there, shaping the place to his liking. We moved from one room to another, but when he opened the doors, I didn't see the renovations or his hard work. Instead, I saw nightmarish scenes in every room. Each room held a different woman, showcasing her last moments like some morbid art gallery. Belts, fishnet stockings, purple bruises from fingers around their throats. They all bore signs of unimaginable violence. These women were dead and locked away from the world behind these doors. Vincent didn't seem to see them, not in their state of death, and I doubted he ever truly saw them when they were alive. He overlooked them. Their fear and screams didn't matter, just as I didn't matter. As I stared down at my feet, I remembered the one room that didn't house a ghost from Vincent's past. Or maybe it did, but he didn't give me the chance to peek behind it. It was the room with the blue door, the one Vincent told me to never go into. He gave it a mask of deadly black mold, one that would steal my life away, but I knew that was a lie. My eyes met the gaze of the pale-eyed woman in the room, her fingernails broken from her desperate attempts to escape. I had waited for hours, and now, in the dead of night, I stood up, looking at her. "Now?" I asked. She nodded slowly. I exited my room and walked down the hall. In front of each door stood a dead woman, each whispering the lies they had been told.
"I can make you famous. I'll show your work to my agent. It won't hurt. I can make it worth your while. I need you. I want you. I love you."
Then I reached the blue door, the one that lacked a ghostly occupant, the one I believed to be my room in this house of horrors. I grasped the handle and twisted it, but it didn't move. It was locked, concealing its secrets from the world. I turned back to see the women all pointing down the hall toward the kitchen. Leaving them behind for a moment, I returned with a large chef's knife. I stared at the brass doorknob, feeling it sinfully whispering to me. The victims of Vincent's past surround me, but their presence didn't make me feel as crazy as the haunting whisper from behind the blue door did. It wanted me to enter, to see beyond its outer shell and discover the darkness within. I rammed the knife between the door and the frame, hearing the alarming crack of splintering wood. Part of me worried that the noise would wake the monster, but I had come too far to turn back now. With a flick of my wrist, I heard the satisfying click as the lock was released. Slowly, I pushed open the blue door. My heart pounded. Something about this room was pulling at my soul, despite the feeling that entering it would mean never leaving again. As I entered, the ghostly hands of a dozen women rested on my shoulder, urging me forward into the dimly lit room. This room was unlike the others. It had gray cement-blocked walls, blood-stained checkered tiles, and drains along the floor. Mounted on the walls were the wide-eyed faces of women who had walked these halls before me. I forced myself to look into their eyes, each one begging to be seen. When I reached one face, it was all too familiar. She used to stare at me from magazine covers and billboards. Her hair was jet black, and marks marred the base of her neck, unlike the others. Her stare held panic and sadness. She was the woman from the bathroom, from my bedroom, and from one of Hollywood's biggest mysteries. "Jasmine?" I whispered softly, careful not to wake the dead, though it seemed they never slept in this blue hell that doubled as the devil's workshop. The ghostly hands continued to push me along the tiled floors, past swings, straps, and other objects some people use to spice up their relationships. But I knew they weren't for love. Not in the hands of this monster. The weight of the ghostly women rose off of me. The need for me to see their pain was now gone. My eyes fell upon a table covered by a sheet, a lumpy shape concealed beneath it. My trembling fingers reached out, grabbing the sheet, tossing it aside. And there she was, Isabel, strapped to the table, stripped down to her underwear. Tears welled up in my eyes, my hands cupping her cheeks. "Isabel!" I cried, shaking her gently. "Isabel!" I worked frantically to undo the straps, then lifted her into a seated position. I pressed my ear against her chest and heard her heart beating faintly against her ribcage. "Come on," I urged, hooking her arm around my neck and dragging her along the blood-stained floor. When I reached the blue door, I could see it. A red dot hovering just above the door, shifting from side to side like the devil's eye, keeping a vigilant watch over his trophy room. "Come on!" I shouted, desperately trying to rouse my sister back to the land of the living. But she remained limp, a dead weight in my arms as I fought to carry her through the gates of hell. I rushed us through the blue doorframe, and when I turned, I saw Vincent staring down at a blue screen. His icy blue eyes rose from the screen and locked onto Isabel and me. He tapped the screen, extinguishing the light, disappearing back into the darkness of the hall.
"I gave you one rule, Mia. One,"
he said. I turned and rushed down the hall toward the white room.
"One simple rule and you broke it, just like all the others."
I could hear his footsteps calmly approaching from behind.
But I'm not all that surprised. Women come from a long line of sinners, from Delilah's costly deception to Eve's questionable appetite,
he said. Finally, I reached the white room, pushing the door open and slamming it shut behind us. Frost crept across the clear glass, and I twisted the lock.
Disobedience is in your DNA, Mia. I shouldn't have thought you were any different from the others,
Vincent said. I did my best to block out his psychotic monologue and focused on pushing a dresser in front of the door. With the knife clenched in my hand, I shoved the dresser across the floor and wedged it against the door. Suddenly, I heard him knocking lightly, calmly. "What the hell is this, Vincent? What the hell did you do to my sister?" I demanded. The knocking paused for a moment. I stood still, staring at the frosted glass, and then it shook under the thunderous force of a madman.
"Let me in, Mia. We can talk about it,"
he said. "Stop!"
"Let me in!"
he hollered. I held up the knife, pointing it at the door. "Just leave us alone!" I shouted. The tip of the knife shook frantically before me, my hands unable to stay still as the pounding on the glass continued. Each thump sent my heart leaping out of my chest.
"Let me in, you stupid cow!"
Vincent screamed. The glass exploded onto the wood of the dresser, and there he stood, staring through the shattered remains of my sanctuary. His foot landed on the broken glass as he pulled himself up, all by grabbing the remaining shards of the door's frame. He didn't flinch as the glass sliced into his skin, his eyes never wavering from me, both filled with the cold intensity of the ocean.
"What are you going to do with that?"
he asked, dismissing me entirely. It wouldn't have mattered if I held a gun or dynamite. He wouldn't have feared me more than a child with a water gun. In his eyes, I wasn't a person or an opponent. I was merely the next head to adorn the wall of his trophy room. "Just let us go, Vincent. I won't tell anyone. I swear. You can let us go, and we'll never see each other again," I begged.
"But I enjoy seeing you,"
Vincent said, a sinister smile spreading across his face. Bloody footprints marked his path along the floor. I raised my knife higher, pointing the trembling blade at his face. "Why are you doing this?" I asked.
"Why? Why?"
he mocked. Vincent glanced to the side, his eyes falling on my sister's bare back. "Don't you fucking touch her!" I shouted, rushing toward him with the blade. My battle cry did little except let him know I was coming. He seized my wrist and shook it fiercely until the knife fell, scattering it across the floor.
"I'll tell you why!"
he roared, spinning me around and wrapping his arms tightly around me, holding me close to his chest.
"I do this for the hearts that you've broken and the ones you will break with your lies and your games."
He inhaled deeply, his nose brushing my hair.
"But mostly, and most importantly, I do this..."
His hands gripped my shoulders, and then he violently threw me to the floor. My face bashed into the tile, blood mingling with my black hair. He tore open the back of my dress and then spun me around. His hand reached for his belt while the other gripped my bloody face.
"Because I can,"
he said. The belt came off, and the black leather quickly coiled around my neck, like a snake would its prey, all before squeezing the life out of it. My hand shot up, and I rammed my nails into his neck, tearing at his skin. The belt tightened. My shouts became whispers. That's when the air felt like sandpaper in my chest. The devil sought a new victim a few months ago, and unknowingly, I offered up my sister and myself to him. Through fading vision, I could see Vincent's wicked smile. He smeared my blood across his lips, forming a sinister grin.
"I love you!"
he shouted as the belt tightened.
"I love you!"
My hand slapped at his wrist.
"I love..."
The leather noose loosened around my neck, and I gasped for air, greedily inhaling as much as I could. Blurriness faded from my sight, revealing Vincent's wide eyes and blood-smeared lips. His hands reached for the black handle of the large knife buried deep into the spot where his neck and shoulder meet. His fingertips brushed against the handle, but another set of hands forced the blade in deeper. Isabel loomed behind Vincent, and behind her stood a dozen of his victims. Their hands rested on Isabel's as she yanked the blade forward, ripping it from his neck. Blood rained down on me, and Vincent stumbled to the side, releasing me from his grip. His hand clutched his neck, crimson-slicked fingers attempting to force the blood back where it belonged. But I didn't care about that. What mattered was the look of pure terror in his wide eyes, and I knew those that Vincent had overlooked and discarded had finally got what they longed for. "Do you see us now?" I whispered. They hovered over him as Isabel helped me to my feet. The dresser slowly eased away from the door.
What the hell?
Isabel said. I smiled and embraced her tightly. Movie magic. Just movie magic. Vincent's screams continued to echo through the house for the rest of the night, and they echo through my dreams till this day. But you know what? That scream is the most empowering sound anyone will ever hear.
I hope you enjoyed Shades of Blue, as written by Sylvester Barzey and performed by Rissa Montanez, Olivia Steele, featuring myself, Paul J. McSorley. Sylvester Barzey is a father, a husband, a soldier, and an anything-goes horror writer who launched his post-apocalyptic zombie Planet Dead series in 2017. He focuses on using diverse characters to push down the wall that is the horror fantasy genre. On to the shows. Longtime resident Otis Gyrie has his very own show here on our network, Scary Stories Told in the Dark, which you can hear every Sunday night. We also have Eric Peabody's Horror Hill, a podcast dedicated to some of our deeper and darker tales. We hope you check him out. And Drew Blood's Dark Tales airs Fridays, featuring some southern down-home horror. And don't forget to check out the Fear from the Heartland archives, featuring more than 120 episodes. Well, friends, our weekly descent into the depths has just about come to a close. But before we go, I'd like to take a moment to thank you for joining us tonight, and remind you to take a moment to stop by our iTunes page and leave Chilling Tales for Dark Nights a 5-star review and a kind word. And follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram if you haven't already. And of course, subscribe to us on YouTube, where you can find an archive of our work going back to 2012. And consider signing up as a patron at our website, chillingtalesfordarknights.com, to show your support and get all of our content ad-free. I'm your host of the evening, Paul J. McSorley, and it's been a pleasure. Tune in again next week when we once again turn off the lights and turn on the dark. Sweet dreams, listener. Sweet dreams.
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.
This episode of Chilling Tales for Dark Nights is brought to you by Fume. Habits get a bad rap, don't they? Sure, there's no shortage of bad ones, but there are good ones too. Things like exercise, proper diet, and flavored air, for example. Our friends at Fume have seized on that last one there and pioneered the ultimate good habit. With no harmful chemicals, no electronics, no nicotine, and no guilt. Fume has invented an award-winning, innovative device that allows you to indulge that oral fixation without all the bad inherent in those other habits. It's earned them not only hundreds of thousands of happy customers, but the backing of doctors in the US. No surprise there, my doctor prefers air to chemicals too. I've already shaken the habit, but I wish I had had my fume device back then. I love this thing. I recommend the crisp mint and orange vanilla flavors. Those are my personal favorites. Beside that, it's a really nicely built device with all these moving parts for fidgeting, which is great for relieving stress. You'll see right away why fume is designed to be a habit. A good habit. One you can lean on and feel good about. Paul J. McSorley approved. Fume has served over 300,000 customers, and you can be the next success story. For a limited time, use my code CHILLING to get a free gift with your journey pack. Head to tryfume.com, that's tryfum.com, and use code CHILLING to get a free gift with your order today. Thanks for your support and for supporting our valuable sponsors.